Hey folks, how you doing? Are we okay? Are we alive? Are we enjoying life? It's Jeremy Kirkland, you're listening to Blammo. I'm glad you're here. Got some serious vibes this week. This is a pod I've been trying to get in the can for a while from a person who has been quietly or loudly influencing the influencers. It's Hagop Kourounian of Director Fits. You guys know what Director Fits is? It's a Substack, it's a moodboard, it's an e-com shop, and as you'll soon hear, but a magazine. So there's a lot going on. Hagop he's amazing, but he's interviewed legends from people like Francis Ford Coppola, and he's kind of on the way to becoming one himself. Hagop and I discuss the origins of Director Fits, growing up in a creative family, why we care about how artists present themselves versus the art they create. That's a big one. You'll hear about that. The resurgence of physical media and his thoughts on whether or not you should have your subtitles on. It's all in there. Here we go. So wait, where are you at right now?
I'm in LA, yeah. In the Valley, in Sherman Oaks, to be more specific.
Nice. And as far as like Director Fits, because I think a lot of people know you specifically for that, like, is that what you're doing full time?
Yeah, it's interesting. This is interesting timing because if we had done this pod like originally, I think we were talking like late last year. And if we had done it late last year, you would hear a different story. So it's good timing. But I worked in the advertising world for like 5-ish years.
Okay.
And it was like my first job out of college. And I did strategy for like big brands like Adobe, Taco Bell, whatever, like these kind of Dr. Pepper, social strategy to be specific. And I unfortunately, not unfortunately, because I had like quit in my head quite a while ago. And I was like phoning it in for a good 2 years, probably the last 2 years. Still doing a good job, but, certainly phoning it in. And I was always cynical about that world anyway. Like, it's never what I really wanted to do. It's just the job I got out of college, right? My friend graciously helped me get the job. A couple other people I knew that worked there vouched for me, and boom, I was in without any advertising internships, nothing. I honestly felt like I shouldn't have been there, but whatever. I got in, did a good job, and then we had this there's this crazy thing going on in the ad industry right now, kind of similar to what's going on in film and entertainment with this huge merger of two ginormous companies.
Boy.
And that just resulted in waves of layoffs. So I was the last wave of a layoff at the end of January. But like I said, I was out of it in my head for the last 2 years. So at least I got to go out with a severance package or something. But yeah, now this is my full-time gig.
So you got hit by a New Year round of layoffs due to the bullshit of absurdly large entertainment companies smashing themselves together for no apparent reason.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I was kind of already quiet quit, I think is the word people have been using lately. But so now this is my full-time gig. I mean, I everything you've seen me do with Director Fits, I would do in between the day job, after hours, working super late or super early. Sometimes I'd wake up at 4:35 and get 2-3 hours of work done and then go to work for the advertising job. But yeah, this is my full-time gig. So I have a Substack, which I'm already doing a bunch of interview content on there, but slowly we'll start ramping up the kind of article write-up kind of vibe versus just interviews to go along with it. And then we do a bunch of merch stuff with a couple of studios and streamers. So hopefully more of that this year. And then a couple other random projects. Magazine is in the works. So
whoa.
We're getting into print media. We have a cool, if everything goes well, we'll have a really cool first issue, early June. So if everything goes correctly. Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It kind of all happened out of nowhere, like for years I've been, not that I think of it as a negative thing really, because it got me where I am, but like a lot of times people describe Director Fits as like a mood board Instagram page, which is what it was for a long time and which it
Yeah.
still is for the most part. But I've always wanted to, because I think the idea of it and the ethos behind it is a little bit more than that. And especially with the interviews that we do, I think rival some of, I mean, not to like toot my own horn, but I think some of the interviews that we do like rival those of other major publications and, no shots or anything, but like the GQs or whatever, a lot of times I hear feedback from the guests and they're like, dude, this was the best fucking thing I did on the press run. And I'm like, okay, good. Like the work we're doing, the research we're doing, the angle we're going in to the conversations are obviously working. So I'm trying to, turn it a bit bigger than what it is. And a magazine seems like an interesting place to do that. Because I always think like something tangible is better than, digital version of whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. I mean, I think we finally hit the era where I feel like print media it's always been like prestige media, right? Like I remember when I had first started the pod, which now fucking it makes me sound like a dinosaur because it was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I would have to really try to explain to people why, I thought this, like the podcasts were the future, whatever it was at the time, but like trying to, but for them, all they cared about was print. And then I think the only curse, I don't know, maybe a handful that they've had to deal with of print media now, it's like it has to be everything to everyone, right? And it's like you look, I love GQ. It's always going to have a special place in my heart, but it's like I don't need to know about sports and like my sex life and what socks I should get and then why a car was built in 1955 versus 58. And, like, I was like, there's all these things in there. And, for me, it's like, I'd rather pay a lot for like a really nice magazine. Like for me, I think the gold standard of menswear magazines now is like L'Etiquette. I don't know if you read that.
Yeah. Shout out
by
Gautier
and those guys. Yeah.
He's so cool.
It's the best. Yeah. And you're like, oh, it doesn't do anything else other than have good fits, explain what those fits are, and that's it. Like there's not these crazy sort of extemporaneous pieces that are, trying to fight the existential crisis of masculinity of people in their, like it's like, whoa. And it's fine that if some of these people have like higher powers, that they want to pursue, or higher callings, that they want to pursue. But like, it's just like, I like focused content.
Yeah. And I think you're totally right about that. And it's looking more and more like, with the rise of Substacks and kind of people trying to do things more independently. Like I always think, I don't know if you follow sports, but I always think of like Pablo Torre too, where like he's this great independent sports journalist and he gets really great scoops on things, but is not tied down by an ESPN or a Fox Sports or someone like Gautier at L'Etiquette. Like that's his thing. So there's not like a higher voice saying you have to like appeal to this audience and that audience. And I think we're in this age of like niche is mainstream, right? There's like a million different niches that are mainstream. Like, I don't know if you watched this like really terrible Manosphere whatever doc on Netflix by
I did watch a little bit of it and I got too depressed and I turned it off.
Yeah, it's terrible. I don't recommend anyone to actually watch it, but what I'm trying to say is there's like a million dudes in that doc that have millions of followers and I have no idea who any of them are, right? So like there are all these pockets of culture that are so popular and really meaningful to those people that follow them, whether it's like K-pop or YouTube or Kick streamers or whatever, or gamers or film people. There's all these interesting pockets of culture that have each taken on their own mainstream like channels. and
Hmm.
we don't really have, outside of like a few things, we don't really have like a monoculture where, you know, everyone is obsessed with the same things. And I think there's good and bad about that. You know, I don't think it's necessarily totally a good thing, but I think it's
Yeah.
something where it's like, okay, there's obviously an audience of people who want to listen to your pod about menswear and read Blackbird Spy Plane and buy L'Etiquette magazine. And
Yeah.
why not cater to those people, especially if it's something you're also interested in and you're good at writing about, you're good at talking about, you're good at interviewing people about, then I think it's better. You know, like you guys are not owned by Condé Nast, and you don't have to sell like a million ads and whatever. You know, you don't have to have 10,000 subscriptions renewed every year. You know, like and
Yeah.
I think sometimes those smaller guys, they're able smaller publications, voices, whatever, they're able to like say things that are more interesting that, you know, people who are fans of those interests will, you know, appreciate hearing, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's also with the rise of like online and sort of like parasocial relationships too. I think people feel deeply connected to the brands and content and channels that they consume, where it's like you really feel like you got a dog in the fight or skin in the game or whatever sort of analogy we want to throw out there. But like, you know, you feel more connected to some of these folks. Um, you know, and whether or not that's good or bad in the long run, I don't know. That's not for me to debate. But yeah, it's nice. And I mean, I remember when I first saw the director fit stuff, I was like, oh, this is the source. Like this is the source of all, you know, like good ideas, good taste. And a lot of it, and I'm not belittling what you're doing, but a lot of it was just like, oh, these are photos from like Getty or photos from, you know, whatever. But for me, at least, they were photos I'd never really seen before, especially of people whom were in motion from their craft, you know, whether it was like an airport fit or, you know, going from one place to another. But it felt really real and authentic because there was not a publicist that staged that shot or, you know, or a brand that paid that person to wear whatever that was. So like without sounding too trite, like what kind of inspired you doing director fits and, you know, finding that stuff?
Yeah, well, thank you first of all. That's so cool. That's what you said is kind of the main reason why I started it. But the origins are like I've always been interested in movies, but you know, like most young men, like around high school, college, I started getting interested into like art house, Criterion,
Yeah.
international cinema, right? And expanding my wealth of knowledge about film. And I've always been somebody who's like I also love music and cars and design and whatever, right? I love all, not all, but I love most of the creative outlets.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody who gets very obsessed with like process and who is the voice behind this thing, right? Like I remember as a kid, my dad putting on like the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, and then at like 7, 8 years old, I'm like reading a book about the Beatles and reading a book about Led Zeppelin. I was always like, who are these people?
Damn.
I need to know the author. Yeah, I know. My mom in like fourth grade or something got a call from my school and said like, your son is reading a book about the Doors and Jim Morrison. Like, do you know he's doing that? Because there's a lot of whatever drugs and whatever, you know,
Yeah.
stuff in there. And my mom was like, yeah, we know, don't worry. But yeah, I've always been interested in the creative process. And when I got interested in movies, the same thing happened where I'd go down these crazy rabbit holes of like, you know, Scorsese and De Niro and Paul Schrader on the set of Taxi Driver, or like
Yeah.
Francis Ford Coppola on the set of The Godfather. You know, like those were the kind of like early stages of me diving into the background of the making of these movies. But then also in conjunction with all that, my dad is a jewelry designer. My grandfather is a still to this day at like 85 years old is a tailor in Beverly Hills with his own shop, and works like across like all the like entertainment agency buildings. So like a lot of these like agents and managers and producers and like other people related to the entertainment industry would come to him to get their suits made, especially back in the day when everybody wore suits to work.
Yeah.
So I grew up at my dad's shop in the summers. I grew up going to my grandpa's tailor shop, being surrounded by suits and great clothing. And then my other uncle was a mechanic for old cars. So I also grew up around old cars. And
Damn.
I grew up around, I know, I have a tasteful family.
Yeah.
I grew up around all these beautiful things, right? And and my parents like would take us to museums and teach us about like, Van Gogh and Rembrandt and Monet as like kids. And we became, I mean, I'm not an artist, but me and my brother, we became interested in creativity and art and learned to appreciate all that stuff. And then that's where kind of like clothing came in as another interest of mine. And I grew up more specifically in middle school in the Tumblr generation of kids where you had like Supreme and Odd Future and Raf Simons and Rick Owens and Galliano, all these like mood board images, Tom Ford, right? All these like mood board images all over Tumblr. And I became very much ingrained in that world. I mean, I never owned anything Rick Owens in my life, but I grew up really appreciating his ethos, and we'd go to Barney's in Beverly Hills with my friend and brother, and we'd just annoy the shit out of the employees and touch everything and try shit on we had no intention of buying, like Yoji and The Row and fucking Raf Simons, and we grew up around this stuff, like appreciating it and touching it. And I think it different than like other kids who grew up in different states who don't have a Barney's New York or something. We felt like we were doing something special just being there. So also when I got into the research, this is such a long answer, sorry, but like when I got into the research
this is great.
of the onset, lifestyle and fits, and I was also reading like Rachel Taschen and Jacob Gallagher and kind of learning a little bit about fashion criticism too in like late high school. I started realizing, oh my God, like a lot of these people, directors whose movies I love are dressed so cool. And at first I couldn't really like place why. And then I started learning a little bit more about like utilitarian clothes and, the history of military gear, or learning about like fly fishing gear and all that kind of stuff. And then you start to see parallels kind of jumping between those two worlds. And then you get to like the late 90s era of like cool directors like Spike Jonze and Michel Gondry and Sofia Coppola and like Chloe Sevigny and all that kind of stuff. I became interested in that era too. And I was interested in streetwear. And then I started learning like, oh my God, like Tamara Davis, amazing director, is married to one of the Beastie Boys. The Beastie Boys started Extra Large. There was an offshoot of Extra Large called X Girl, started by Kim Gordon and whatnot. And then Sofia Coppola and Spike Jonze did their first like runway guerrilla style fashion show. And I started connecting all these dots, and I was like, wow, what an interesting intersection. But then it didn't until 2021 is when I actually started posting these images. Like the idea was ruminating in my head, and I had this giant folder on my computer of all these images, and without even curating them, like looking at the like folder and everything kind of like listed in there and seeing the little images previews, I was like, wow, this already looks like an Instagram page without trying, So I started just dumping them on IG, doing a little bit of research, trying to get more information about the photos, or at least trying to say something interesting if there wasn't a lot of information about what the people were wearing, doing a lot of reverse Google image searching for things. And then it kind of took off. And the last thing I'll say is I kind of started to grow frustrated with some of the major outlets that would profile someone like Martin Scorsese or Francis Ford Coppola or Wim Wenders or whatever, and I used to think it was like a slight or something. I was like, why are they not asking about what they wear? Because Scorsese has a huge history with Giorgio Armani. Francis Ford Coppola has a huge history with like classic Italian tailoring, and for a bigger guy, he clearly knows how proportions work. Which I think is something hard to do. And then Wim Wenders made a whole documentary on Yoji. His best friends with Yoji, constantly wears Yoji, and it's like, why? There's a clear connection here. Why aren't these people poking at it? And I was like, okay, well, if they're not going to do it, who is? I should try to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's great. Okay, wait a second. Look, sometimes I got to hit that pause button in here to tell you something. As you know, I've been collecting watches for 15 plus years now, even more than I've been doing this podcast. I got Mickey Mouse watches, I got Snoopy, I even got some heavy hitters in there, including my prize Seikos. And you're like, Jeremy, I know, but I'm always nervous about buying watches. It's kind of weird out there on the internet. Well, that's why your boy uses Bezel. Bezel is an incredible, trusted marketplace to find and buy your next dream watch, or even that new daily driver. They even have their own auctions, all backed and vetted by their incredible team of authenticators and experts. By the way, they're real people. It's not some tacky AI. That's super easy. You can contact their concierge team and say, hey, I'm looking for this or I'm looking for that, and they'll find it for you. And next thing you know, you'll receive that perfect watch. You can rest easy knowing it's authentic, correct, and now in the perfect spot on your wrist. So if you're looking for a new Speedmaster, Datejust, or you just want something fun and weird, visit getbezel.com and find your next watch at getbezel.com. Wait, what? Oh, you already did this? Oh, you just want to make sure that your new toy now stays safe. Look, I get it, because now Bezel offers insurance for your collection, even if you didn't purchase from them. So find it, buy it, or bid on your next watch at getbezel.com and insure it while you're at it at getbezel.com. I think the thing that I constantly come back to this question when, many people talk about like fashion icons, right? Like menswear fashion icons, and you start throwing people's name into the bucket of like this person, it was this fit or was this look, and it was like rarely, if ever, does anyone, with the exclusion of say Ralph Lauren, does anyone mention a designer? Mm-hmm. They mention, it's like, Paul Newman or Robert Redford, or Miles Davis, Steve McQueen, all these sort of icons, right? That were never like having a primary career in fashion. And I'm just curious, like, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, personally, I take style cues from designers. Like I love the style of Alexander McQueen, and I love the style even of like Jonathan Anderson now or Raph. I think there's something so interesting, or Miucci Prada as well. I think there's something so interesting that these people, and I think it kind of goes back to like how directors dress as well. I think there's something so interesting about the people who made the stuff dress kind of a lot differently than the things they're making, Like I don't think Raph or even like Alexander McQueen ever wore what was on the runway. Like they kind of had their own uniform, very dark colors. Like Alex would wear like Nike trainers and jeans and a black t-shirt or a white t-shirt or something. And I think there's something really interesting about that, because it's almost like one, I think it's a bit like, I think sometimes those people don't want to like take the spotlight away from what really matters, which is the work, right? Which is the runway collection. And I think there's a similar thing with directors as well, where I think there's certainly loud dressing directors, don't get me wrong, especially a few that I can think of like on the red carpet for sure, or at premieres would be a bit more peacocky in their dress. But I think on the set, there's something interesting about the uniform dressing of these people. Because at the end of the day, I don't know if I can say the same about designing, for example, but I think directing, I've never directed anything, but from everything I've learned and read and talked to directors about, is like it's a very hands-on, tough job where you at some point you might be on your hands and knees on your back holding a camera, working in really rough conditions, either in the cold or in the hot. And I think it's the same kind of thing. It's the same reason why I think we appreciate like military gear or sportswear or something, is because it's a lot of times the idea behind the way these people are getting dressed are with a function in mind, right? It's like an M65 jacket looks the way it is because people in Vietnam needed those certain pockets and needed that type of weight and that color, etc. Right? Same with like an aviator jacket or something. And I think there's a similar thing with directors as well, where people are dressed in a certain way because of certain conditions they're going to be. Or another thing that happens too is a lot of times I think Francis Ford Coppola, name drop, told me this, is he wore a suit and a tie every day because on his first film, he was in the bathroom at like whatever studio or area they were shooting in. And he was in the bathroom in the stall, kind of like a classic like high school movie where you're in the stall and then, the mean kids come into the bathroom and don't know you're there and talk shit about you. And they basically called him like a schlub or something, right? They said he looks like shit. They're like, how is this guy in charge of, the whole production? And then kind of from that day on, he like literally wore like as nice of a suit as he can get his hands on every day to remind people that he's the man in charge. Like, and there's something also about that too, where it's like maybe a suit is less utilitarian than like Tony Scott's style of like a fishing vest and like tiny little short shorts or something and a hat. But I think that's what's interesting, is because I think directors dress with a purpose. It's not like, it's a generalization, but I think for the most part, these people dress with a purpose, and I think that results in a very interesting look. And they're also artists, and I personally am attracted to like the way auteurs dress, right? Which is a word I know some auteurs don't like to hear about themselves, but people who like write and direct and produce or sometimes even act in their films, it's so interesting because they are building a world, right? They're not only writing a story and creating characters, but they're in charge of how the set looks. They're in charge of the costumes. Not fully, but they get a final say in how the aesthetics of this world they're building looks, down to the music, to the cars, to the buildings and everything. And I think it's silly to think that like clothing wouldn't matter to these people as well, especially in the way they present themselves to the world and to their collaborators. So
yeah, it sounds to me like you're obsessed with like creative workwear, like, or the workwear of the creative individual, in the sense, how if it's Francis Ford Coppola and how he wants to present himself, or Paul Schrader or any of these people, but it's also, they're dressing more with the career that they're doing in mind versus to say something else about themselves. I did think it was interesting too, because when we were talking about, you're like, oh yeah, I do take a lot of the cues from how designers dress. And I was like, oh, he's going to mention a collection or a specific collection, but you more meant how the designers themselves personally dress versus, what they're sending down the runway, which I think is a really important distinction to make, because you're right. A lot of them, Jonathan Anderson wears just like jeans, shoes, and a t-shirt, and a V-neck, or whatever, like all those guys. And I do think it's so interesting to me, because it's, rarely do we look at the actual creative output of what the artist does, that we're, specifically on a sartorial mindset. We're like, oh, this is, because someone else had a say in it, right? But if we're looking at how that person dresses themselves to make the creative output, is what we're the most interested in.
Yeah, I don't know what that says about me as a person and what I value, but I think there's something really cool. I mean, I also kind of grew up in this generation of kids who are online who, that's where we got most of our inspiration from, right? And
Sure.
I think like, the people I idolized at the time, I would look at what they were wearing, what music they were listening to, where they
Yeah.
would go to eat when they came to LA. And, there's something interesting about a cosign, the cosign from someone you admire, right? And,
Hmm.
sometimes I think those things don't work out. Like I've definitely, seen, I don't know, like Frank Ocean back in high school talk about a song, and I'm like, oh, that song sucks. It's not for me. But I think that I think there's something interesting though about knowing what these people you admire and what their interests are, and kind of trying to take cues from them. But also at the same time too, I do think those designers, most specifically like Alexander McQueen, I think like he dresses like that's how I aspire to dress. I'm not a very like loud and you know uh, as much as I love clothes and I like looking at runway shows and I like things that are elaborate, it's just not for me or my body type or my personality. I kind of like to hide a bit. This might be the brightest item of clothing I wear, and it was the only one
Right.
that was ironed and ready to go right now. But
What
I don't know.
what brands do you like that when you are shopping for yourself? What are the brands that you gravitate towards?
Yeah, it's interesting. I love going to eBay for vintage Brooks Brothers shirts. I think those because you can get them for cheap, like under $50, and you get like if you buy them
Still?
from the.
You think you still can?
Well, okay, I'll be honest with you. I haven't looked in like 5 to 6 months because I bought a shit ton like over the last 2 3 years. So I think I have
Okay.
enough
Yeah.
to like get me by for a while. But at one point, I was buying like beautiful blue. Like I have like 4 or 5 different shades of different blue Oxford shirts that are like you know I think I got anywhere from like $20 to $60 each. Some of them are
It's a
made
good
in
deal.
France. Some of them are made in China, I think. But whatever. No one's gonna look at the
Whatever.
label. And then I love the made in France Lacoste stuff too for button down
Yeah.
shirts. I think they had a lot of cool patterns, and there's a great kind of like surplusy vintage store by me called Iguana Vintage. And they have like an entire rack of Lacoste shirts. And if you look carefully, like, out of the 100 that they have, like maybe 2 or 3 will be the made in France ones. And
Hmm.
I try to always buy them if they fit me. But for pants, I'm really weird with pants. I like just one style of pants, which is like essentially like a slightly baggier workwear pant. And I think Ben Davis makes the greatest pants ever. And
Ah, you're a Ben Davis guy.
yeah,
Okay.
and it's $50. Like I buy one like every 2 or 3 months, and I'm like, okay, I got like fresh pair of pants. I also like wearing the same thing every day. I know that's crazy, but like I have multiple variations of the same thing, and I pretty much just wear the same thing every day. Like I also wear like either Paraboot Michaels every day or a few different models of Mephistos, which
The
I've been wearing.
match.
The match is probably my most worn, but I like the rainbow as well.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
the
Real head.
rainbow's the rainbow's really nice, and the origin of my Mephisto interest is really funny too. Because like I said, I went to an Armenian school for high school and middle
Hmm.
school, and we'd have this priest that would come, I don't know, every quarter or something, and do a sermon and bless, whatever. I don't know. And I
Sure.
remember being so bored at these things. And sometimes I'd be towards the front of the assembly, and I'd look down and I'd see his shoes because he's wearing like this like long black robe, but you could see his
Yeah.
shoes. And I remember seeing the Mephisto match shoes on him, and that brand Mephisto always stuck in my head because there also used to be a store by me too, which is rare. I don't think they have any U.S.
Oh,
stores anymore. Um,
no, they don't.
so I remember walking into that store as a high schooler and being like, "Holy fuck, these shoes are $400, $300." Like
Yeah.
at that age, it didn't compute, but now it's like okay, like twice a year, 3 times a year, I'm buying a new pair of these shoes. But yeah, I like very classic things. I like the LA Apparel white T-shirt. Very very simple things. I'm not a very like fussy guy when it comes to clothes.
I think my friends that are the happiest in what they wear are the ones who wear the same thing every day, or a variation of the same thing. I have one of my best friends. He essentially will wear a military surplus pant and an Oxford every day, and like he's good. And and it's also, I think it says a lot about yourself when you're not necessarily dressing to prove anything anymore. I feel like many people, myself specifically, when I was younger, how I wanted to get dressed, I wanted to tell the world all of these other things about me, whether it was to overcompensate for an insecurity of maybe my social status or how I interpreted myself, whatever that was. But it was like I had to wear a piece of clothing that made that person think I belonged, here or here. And it's maybe only been the past 5 or 6 years or so that I'm more comfortable just like, I'm going to more or less try to wear like a similar uniform. And a lot of it is just workwear. It's like workwear and like a blue sport coat.
No, I totally agree. I agree with that too. I mean, for a very long time, since middle school, I felt like with clothes, I tried to prove a point, right? That I know something you don't know.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I took pride in like the fact that I discovered something before someone else,
Oh yeah.
But now I'm like, I don't care. I really don't care. It doesn't matter. I think the people that know me well know what I know what I'm into, know that. Like I remember at my high school, it was a tiny Armenian high school, and me and my best friend and my brother were probably like at that time the only ones to like go to the Supreme store and get retro Jordans, and like I said, go to like Barney's and get like a Bottega card holder and be like, holy shit, we just spent like 400 whatever, like just make these frivolous purchases, but with the like idea in the back of our head that like, oh, no one at school is gonna have this or even knows what it is. And then I remember being like having this sort of like anger, which is something I probably should have explored in therapy. Is like I remember having this sort of anger when all those people who didn't know what any of this was then got on the wave like 4 or 5 years later.
Oh boy. You're scratching a serious itch. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
And then they thought at that time that like they were hot shit because, they got, I don't know, bred Jordan 11s. And me and my friends were like, bro, we fucking knew about this shit like 6 years ago. We were in line at Primitive to get these like, 5-6 years ago, whatever. It was just this weird thing of like, why am I mad that these people discovered something? But I try not to think like that anymore. I don't think it's healthy.
Well, you're right. It's not healthy, but it is very true. Like there are, and I've talked about this on the pod before, there's maybe like, I don't know, a very small handful of people, like 2 or 3 people that when they start wearing a certain brand or get a watch or whatever it is, like, when I was younger, it was like if this person also liked this band, but so it's always been this type of individual. I was like, oh, like I didn't respect their own creative choices. And when all of a sudden their creative choices and preferences were overlapping mine, I was like, it's cooked.
Yeah.
And there are multiple brands that I walked away from after I had probably invested, thousands of dollars, when it was like, this person's wearing Rick Owens. I was like, I'm gone. This person's in Tom Brown. I was like, I'm over. I'm gone. It's it.
Yeah. And that's so fair. I still prescribe to that a bit, which is also probably why I'm dressing the way I do now, is because it's probably
it's all right.
Reaction to, well, everyone knows about everyone. But I remember growing up at a time where guys didn't care about what they wore. I mean, at least the people around me. And now it's like every guy I know thinks they have to like, whatever, buy an off-white shirt or something like that, And I think even though I would probably never wear off-white, but I think the way I dress in this simple way is probably a reaction against the fact that other guys care about the way they dress, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. It's like, as much as there's a lot of people who are kind of, I don't know, that are where the pendulum swing from going from like skinnier fits to more oversized fits. And the other day I was out and I saw this dude that was wearing something that was oversized, but you could tell that he wasn't comfortable in it. You know what I mean? Like he was wearing this oversized thing and my heart just broke for him. And by the way, I don't say this that like I'm in this elevated plane of existence looking down upon people, but it's like I felt so bad watching this person, masquerade around, clearly extremely uncomfortable in what he was trying to wear, and it's like, I'm like, okay, I was like, what's going on in this dude's head? Like, who is he, who is he trying to be? Like all of us are trying to be someone else most of the time. It's like, what is this dude trying to be? And I was like, I don't know. I wanted to go over there and be like, dude, it's cool. You don't have to do this. But of course I didn't. I was like, damn, dude, that guy's cooked.
No, I think that's true. And I think that's why at the end of the day, really the brands and all that kind of stuff doesn't matter. As much as I love brands and consumerism and all this stuff, I play into it, but I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because like you'll see like, you'll see like Sam Eukilis's IG page or like New York Nico's IG page, and you see some like old guy who doesn't give a shit about what he's wearing, but he looks unbelievably comfortable and cool. Or, I think what matters is how you feel and how the clothes make you feel, which is why I certainly used to wear skinny jeans, but it's also why I'm not wearing the huge pants right now, is because just because they're comfortable doesn't mean, just because they're cool doesn't mean I'm comfortable wearing them. And I'm not going to change my comfort level to like match with the times, quote unquote,
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Let's talk about some movies here. So, I mean, as a person who's, becoming the arbiter of taste in films and pointing people towards classic stuff, what are some of the top movies or things that you find yourself revisiting?
Oh, revisiting just for pure entertainment sake? Or
yeah.
Yeah.
You put it on to reset.
Yeah. Oh man. I love Abel Ferrara movies, man. They make me feel so good for some reason. And I like Miss 45 or even New Rose Hotel, King of New York, of course. Dangerous Game, I think, is one of his like more underrated ones. But there's something so like I love that you can tell Abel Ferrara made this movie, and not necessarily in a visual sense. You could do that in a visual sense, but like what the movies are about feels so related to. And this might be a bias because I just read his autobiography, or his memoir.
Oh wow!
But the way, yeah, it's incredible. I highly recommend it. It's called Scene, and he's a fucking chaotic guy, and he writes in a chaotic way, and if you've even listened to like one interview of his and then you read the book, you'll like listen to it in his voice, Or I think he read the audiobook as well, if that's your thing.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, but I think Abel Ferrara movies definitely do that for me. Let's see. I mean, King of New York. I said that. Sorry, King of Comedy does that for me as well, where it's another one of these.
Really?
I have it's weird. Like I can't watch like a comforting movie. I have to watch something like either fucked up or anxiety inducing to comfort me, if that makes sense, Like lately,
those are emotionally taxing movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but that I think it's like how people describe reality TV sometimes, right? Like seeing someone else's like personal problems makes you feel good about your own, And I think like the Scream movies have been doing that for me lately too. Like I had never seen Scream 2 or 3, and I watched them for the first time recently, and I was obsessed. They're so good. And Wes Craven has this like 90s kind of like grainy glow over the movies. I
Yeah, he
don't
does. Yeah, that's a good
I'm not
point.
like
Yeah.
well versed in like filmmaking terms, you know, like the technical terms, but there's something about those movies that looks like anything else, you know, like they look beautiful.
Yeah.
And they're so silly, but also like, you know, there's a couple of great kills in them, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but I love those. Let me think. There's probably like another one. Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway. Again, both emotionally
Oh,
taxing
wow.
movies. But yeah, those
Yeah.
I could watch. Like if you put it on right now and I had a shit ton of work to do, I would probably ignore the work and just watch the movie. It's so good. Um, but yeah, those are probably my first ones that come to mind. I mean, a long time ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, Heat was one of those things where something about seeing like hot guys fucking shoot big ass guns is like it's awesome, you know? I don't know. It's like even the noise, the loud ass noise, or the kind of like
Yeah.
industrial soundtrack it has. I don't know. Those are great movies too.
You psyched for Heat too?
I haven't read the book yet, so I don't know what I'm getting into, but definitely. I mean, anything Michael Mann, I'm in. He's the god.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I started reading Heat 2, and then I was like, well, wait. I was like, if I read this, am I going to ruin,
Yeah.
my movie experience? Where I was like, oh, maybe I stop. And so I'm like, I basically read like halfway of Heat 2. And then I was like, I kind of would rather be, but I mean, who knows? I don't know how much exactly it'll be like the book. I mean, it's a long ass book anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's a good point. I mean, sometimes I think it depends, right? Like I read Killers of the Flower Moon like a while before the movie came out, and then Marty took like a bunch of liberties with it. So
Oh yeah.
it wasn't
Very
anything
different.
like the book really for the most part. So that one I was kind of glad I read the book first because I think it brought a bit more of like a emotional hit whenever I visually saw what was happening, right? Like it's a terribly sad story, but then to see it like on a big screen and like incredible actors perform those things, I think it hit me a little harder.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I
Did you?
love reading books of the movies. That's probably my favorite genre of book to read is books that have movies made of them, you know?
I was gonna say, have you read The Wager?
No, not yet, but I've heard incredible things about it. It's good.
Yeah, I think it's not the current Scorsese movie, but he at one point, yeah, that someone had some Deadline article or whatever about Scorsese getting the movie rights to The Wager. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's the same. I think it's the same person who had written Killers of the
Yeah.
Flower Moon.
David
Um,
Gran?
yeah,
I think that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool. I mean, I will say, I mean, the whole premise of the book is basically there's a shipwreck and half of the dudes make it back and thinking the other half isn't going to make it back, and then they make it back, and there's like a big, so there's like a court story in it, and it's set in old British maritime law and all these different things, and there's also like a shipwreck story, and it's cool, but I don't know, I did the audiobook of it,
Hmm.
and the audiobook felt a little bit better because I don't know, I felt like the performance of some of the stuff, like, I don't know if you ever saw that Seinfeld where it's like the voice in your head. As I was reading that book, I was like, everyone sounds like an asshole. And I was like, oh, it's just me voicing these people in my head. I
Yeah. Yeah.
was like, I
Yeah.
have to switch.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, that sounds great. There's a long list of books that are on my list, but that one's definitely on there of things to read next.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. But man, those are some serious picks movie wise. Yeah, I think all my movie picks are really tacky, and they're just like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Well, what are
And,
yours? I'd love to know yours.
well, yeah, I mean, I like a lot of really shitty '90s comedies,
Mhm.
like Heavyweights and House Guest. Heavyweights is this, Judd Apatow, Stephen Brill. It's like when Ben Stiller more or less really like burst onto the scene in some kind of classic characters that he does. But it's an inherently like poor film. I would say it wouldn't be received the same way because there's a lot of like kind of like fat shaming and stuff, which is not why I like it, but it's just like a summer camp movie. House Guest is Phil Hartman and Sinbad, which is
Phil
one of my
Hartman's
favorite films
legend.
ever. Yeah. I met Sinbad a couple different times and asked him about House Guest.
Wow.
And it was, I mean, that was my Spielberg moment. And then I like Big Trouble in Little China, like John Carpenter movies.
Yeah.
So none of these things where someone's gonna be like, oh man, that opening shot of this, and it's like the product placement of House Guest with McDonald's is fucking abhorrent, but it's all in there, and it's just this like really stupid movie. But I feel like I can turn my brain off, and I don't know. But it's weird, and I talk about this a lot with other friends of mine who work and make films. A lot of movies like that aren't going to get made anymore because those were movies that were made at a time when you could make that money back from video rentals.
Mm-hmm.
Like movies like, even a movie like Step Brothers or something like that probably wouldn't get made. I mean, it would with Will Ferrell, right? But like a movie like that, or a movie like Clifford, Clifford was not a massive box office hit. But a lot of those movies did really well because they would make up for the budget shortfall in video rentals. And we just don't really have that anymore. Like mid-level comedies and mid-level budget films have essentially, gone the way of the buffalo, because now it's like if a movie can't potentially make $1 billion, people just aren't really going to finance it. And it's honestly really, really sad because it makes you think about what other, and so it's either a Neon movie or an A24 movie that's left greenlighting these, sub $50 million movies, or 100 or 150. And now even then, like $150 or $200 million movie is like somewhat affordable, but it's like you basically need a 5 to 8x return if you want a sign off from a major studio. Or you have to have IP that is worth billions, which is why all the movies that we're getting ready to see are either animated or they're based off of books, or so it's really tough. I mean, my heart does go out to a lot of people who are trying to make films, and now that this whole Paramount debacle of them essentially owning everything, I don't know, but I don't want to bring the mood down too much.
No, all I'll say on top of that is it fucking sucks. It really does suck, and what sucks even harder is like Warner Brothers, the studio heads, Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi, they proved that you could have an original auteur $150 million film like One Battle After Another. You could have an original auteur-driven film, genre film like Sinners for like $90 million that you budget-wise. Then you could also have your IP movies like a Minecraft or Superman. And then you could also have your small horror films like, I think, The Conjuring and Final Destination. And you could literally crush it. I mean, obviously, it's a rare year because they literally had a hit with like all 10 movies they released in 2025. But they proved that you can do all of that. Like, you don't need to make like Star Wars 500 and Marvel Avengers 25. You could make you could give someone like PTA and sure, that movie wasn't the most profitable, but it won a shit ton of awards. It's going to be like a legacy title in the Warner Brothers and maybe now Paramount like library of films. And then Sinners made a lot of money. Minecraft made a lot of money. Final Destination made a lot of money, and they were all great movies for the most part. So I think that what's sad is you could do that, right? They proved you can do that, but it's probably no longer going to be a thing that happens because of this stupid merger, which they're already finding every way to like cost cut and save money. And it's probably very likely that those two studio heads, they're going to keep their jobs, but it's very unlikely that they're going to be able to be given the track to kind of, do something like this again, which is unfortunate, but whatever.
Yeah. I mean, here's hope that there's, 5 more A24s. And I know that those companies are actually like VC backed, right? But like, here's hope that there are other movie studios that are going to make that sort of content, because if it's more about, fine, you put it on Apple or some type of streaming service, or you make your own, or you movie style or whatever, then maybe we can be in a good spot. But I do think this is, excuse me, this kind of leads me to people like you, where there needs to be people out there that are helping people understand why good art is good. Otherwise, we're going to have a gajillion Netflix style laundry movies where the same plot points are reiterated in the dialogue in order to catch up with our shitty short-term attention span while we have our phones in our hand looking at someone's Instagram page.
Yeah. Do not pull your phone out in front of me at a movie theater. I will yell at you. I don't care. And I've done it a few times. I've done it more than a few times. There's nothing more I hate than the like I'm a Gen Z person, and I'm like, how have all my peers lost their attention spans? Even so that like, even for like a TV show, like a 20-30 minute TV show, people are like pulling their phones out. I get it. Some things are bad. There's a lot of bad TV, a lot of bad movies, but like, yes, I don't know. I totally agree with you. We're kind of, but yes, director fits, and a lot of my peers, I think, prove that there is a sizable fan base for these very like artistic, auteur-driven films, and I think they do. I mean, I've never thought of it like that, so I'm very happy to hear you say that. Is like, yeah, I guess we are. I mean, a lot of people I work with as well. Like, I work with Netflix, I work with Focus Features, Searchlight Pictures, and all the like PR companies I work with that kind of supply me with these amazing guests for our interview series. Like, they do say like, we love your audience. We love the people that follow you and the people that engage with your content. And I think that is proof that, there is enough people out there to support this thing. And I think there was a stat out there that like, despite all this kind of like negative talk about Hollywood and the industry, I think there was a spike in box office sales that was led by Gen Z as the number one age group going to movie theaters in 2025. So, and then there's this whole other wave happening here in LA, and I think in New York and a few other cities as well, where there's this great LA Times article that came out a few weeks ago that was talking about the different video stores that we have left here in LA, like the independent video stores. Yeah, so you have Vidiot's, Videotech, Cinephile Video. There might be a couple others I'm leaving out on accident. There's a VHS specific store as well in Silver Lake. I'm forgetting their name right now. I apologize. Whammy Analog Media too. So like, there are all these great stores, where they have these incredible archives of DVDs, a lot of things you can't find on streaming, that are impossible to even find on streaming, or versions of films and versions of films with like special commentary and all this extra information. A lot of cool like exploitation films, X-rated films. Like, they just have stuff you cannot find, right? Vidiots and Cinephile Video and Videotech, they were all talking about how young kids are coming in and engaging with the store and renting things and bringing them back and signing up for memberships. So like, there is this great spike in that behavior amongst younger people, at least here in LA, in our, I guess it's the wrong kind of sample size because it's a very biased sample size, but like still, I think that was very like heartwarming for me to see. And it kind of goes back to like what we were talking about earlier, where like the physical media, the tangible things are kind of like what are it's like I think we live in a reactionary culture, right? For so long everything was streaming. Everything you're doing is you're engaging with online, and then vinyls start to pop up, right? Like there was this great stat from like 5-6 years ago where they were saying they were pressing more for the first time in a long time. They were pressing more vinyls than they were printing CDs or whatever, right? And I know you know this experience, but like there's nothing like owning your favorite album on vinyl, right? And looking through the liner notes, and if it's a double LP, like opening up the thing and looking at the images of the band or whatever. And I think the same goes for movies now. There's this whole like Blu-ray collecting culture, where with the Criterions and the Arrow videos and the Vinegar Syndrome stuff, like I personally am looking at like fucking 4 shelves here of like hundreds of dollars I've spent on Blu-rays and DVDs, and there's nothing like looking at your shelf, picking a movie, popping it into the player, because I am one of those people that I'll be on Netflix or HBO or Hulu or whatever and spend like 40 minutes looking for something and I don't find anything. It's that like decision fatigue or whatever it is, right? There, it's like there's too many options, but yeah, all those things are good things,
No, I agree. I mean, I keep wondering, it's funny too, because like you look at Hulu, you look at, all the streaming services, and I'm aware that people's like your Netflix looks different than mine, right? Like I'm aware that each person has their own sort of tailored algorithm, but I am still shocked that there is not like, if a movie is this big or this important, they don't have the actual like, okay, if it's a new Adam Scott movie and it's a Apple TV movie, where the fuck is Adam Scott's like picks of movies you should rent or watch, But it's because a lot of these services are also studios. They're like, well, we don't want to give attention to this other project. If John Smith's movie picks are all made by an opposing studio, they're not going to feature that. Because I'm like, well, what's great is you can find that on things like Letterboxd, or or you go to a video store and you find the manager's picks or someone there that will. Because I still, I'm in a group chat like other people that have a lot of other friends who are into arts and stuff, and I'm like, okay, what are the movies you're watching, or what are the things I should check out? And that's the thing that gives me hope, is that like the algorithm of the friend is not going to die.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I think that also goes back to what we were talking about earlier too, with like, some of these smaller creators and voices, which is, I think more so than ever now, curation is incredibly important, right? Especially in the algorithm kind of driven culture, like hearing what other people are consuming and recommending. I think, even though I think the recommendation kind of culture is getting a bit like tedious, right, or whatever. There's a bit too much. Like I don't need to know like every celebrity's favorite coffee shop or whatever. But
it's true. It's true.
But I do think like, even in the guests that you have on this podcast, or whatever brands like Blackbird Spy Plane writes about, or Rachel Tashin reviews enthusiastically, I think like those are more important than ever. Like critics are more important than ever, because without them, we're just going to listen to some like AI fucking algorithm tell us what's cool. Like I remember I went to Arcana Books, the best store in Los Angeles, Arcana Books, and the guys there like I wouldn't say know me, but like recognize me when I walk in and check out. And almost every time the same dude checks me out, and in our like 5 to 6 minute conversation while I'm buying stuff, he always recommends them. He looks at the books that I'm buying and he's like, well, I'm not telling you to go buy this, but like, have you heard of, this photographer, this cinematographer was inspired by this photographer, and like, boom, I would never have looked this person up. But now I have this new, like little breath of knowledge from a really cool person who works at a really cool store. And I think that kind of thing is lost, especially with Hulu and whatever, like no shade to those platforms, they're doing what they got to do, but there is something that's lost about like the human recommendation. And I think there is certainly like, there's been an influx of it, but I would welcome more, I think that's always good.
Well, we're starting to wrap up here. There's a couple kind of rapid fire questions I want to ask. So obviously it sounds like you're a fan of physical media. Yeah. So what's the last movie you bought?
Last movie I bought was, I can see it here on my shelf. There's a great movie called Hollywood 90028, which is the area code of Hollywood, the zip code. And it's this really cool movie by, I think her first name is Christina Hornisher is her full name. I think I might be getting it wrong. But she's made like one movie and she made it as like a UCLA student. It's this really cool movie about like a photographer in LA who like kind of like a bit of a noirish film, kills somebody, you're just following him around. But it has the greatest ending shot I've ever seen in any movie. And I got to see it at the New Beverly like a while ago, maybe like 2019 or something. And I remember the last shot just blew me away, and it wasn't available to watch anywhere for a very long time, but I'm blanking on the name of the Blu-ray company that put it out and remastered it, but Hollywood 90028, incredible movie, recommend it to everyone. I think you could still buy the Blu-ray on if you just Google it.
Nice. And you're, it sounds like you're a no phones during viewing experience person. Also at home?
Yeah. I won't watch. I won't watch a movie unless I know I'm not going to get like a shit ton of emails or texts. So
yeah.
And good. Sometimes I'll just leave it in the other room if I can, or just turn it the other way.
Or DND. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Do you put subtitles on when you watch something?
I try not to, but sometimes lately with like British movies, it's been very helpful because sometimes I can't understand what they're saying from time to time.
Especially that makes sense. I mean, I have, my friend is basically by default always subtitles, no matter what it is. There's always subtitles on, and it's super distracting to me. But I also get it. I mean, there is, if it's a movie, like say you're going to watch Ratcatcher, right? That like crazy Scottish movie with the strikes and all that. Like, okay, you do need subtitles because it's very difficult to understand.
Yeah.
But, I was watching The Pit last night with my wife and she's like, turn the subtitles on. And I'm like, fucking hell. I'm like, all right, fine.
Yeah, I used to make a bigger deal about it, but now I'm like, all right, whatever, who cares? It's fine. But totally, my eyes go down to the words and I like look at the image.
Yes.
Yeah,
but I think that's the thing too, is I'm like, well, I might be missing the shot. I want to see what they want me to see.
Yeah. Yeah, you are.
But
I don't know.
Anyway.
Sometimes you have no choice, I guess, but whatever. Yeah. It's fine. If other people around me want it, I'll happily do it. But usually at home by myself, I don't really do it.
And do you watch movies with headphones?
Ooh, if I'm watching on my laptop, then it's necessary, yeah. But usually I go no headphones, yeah. And I rarely watch a movie on my laptop. It's pretty rare. I try to at least see it on the TV.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. All right. Cool. Well, thank you so much for this. Before we wrap, is there anything you want to add or mention that I didn't ask?
Well, just, we have the Substack, check it out. If you follow Director Fitz on Instagram, you'll see hopefully a magazine announcement soon. And yeah, that's it. I don't really have much else to add.
Hell yeah. All right. Thanks, man. It was great chatting. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, yes, sir. See you soon.